Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rock Shop with Ralph. Tonight, I have multi-platinum producer, mixer, musician, engineer. He's worked with some of the biggest names out there today. Let me give you some of the names that he's worked with. Quiet Riot, Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath, Saliva, Seether, Alice Cooper, Lynyard Skynard, Anvil, Rob Zombie, Sebastian Bach. I could keep going, but I'm going to get out of breath. Anyway, let's welcome Mr. Bob Marlette. How you doing, Bob?
Thank you for having me.
Hey, listen, the pleasure's all mine because as we were discussing before we started recording, I'm the guy that loves producers. I love anything and everything that has to do with music. I'm the guy that was in his room reading the liner notes, reading the producers, the mixers, the engineers, knowing all their names. When I go to a movie, I watch the credits. You know, I was dating my wife. We used to go to the movies, and the movie was over. She's walking out the door, and I'm there like this, watching the credits roll.
It's not over yet.
Wait, I got to see who the key grip on this movie is.
Yeah, right. I'm with you, dude. I'm with you. I'm that same way.
Yeah, but I'm happy to have you. We want to pick your brain a little bit, and we're going to get my fans to know, if they don't know already, who Bob Marlette is and who he worked with and some of the stories that you can tell. Anyway, first thing I always ask, how you doing?
As I've said on many occasions, for an old, tired, fat guy, I'm pretty good. It's hard to complain. I have led the most blessed life and in so many different ways. And it's really hard to complain. As I've always said, it's like, that old adage that if you love what you do for a living, you'll never work a day in your life. Although there's been a few bands that I've had to work. But there you go.
Well, one thing I want to mention is you're a musician. Because on a lot of these albums that you produce, you play, and you're a songwriter as well. You write the songs with them, and you play a lot of bass. What other instruments do you play? I'm sure guitar.
I'm actually a keyboard player. People, a lot of people don't realize that because, it's like so many of the records in, the last 25 years or so, I played a lot of, guitar and bass and on them. And, but I'm actually a keyboard player. So, and when I was young, I was just that guy that, I was never happy just knowing my parts. I wanted to know everybody's parts, every single nuance that, I was just that guy that was just obsessed over of every aspect of it. I wanted to know it,
And that's the producer in you.
Yeah.
And I got to say, you mentioned keyboards. One of the albums you played keyboard on, and this is how diverse your repertoire is. You played keyboards on Laura Branigan's album.
I actually, I sort of co-produced that with the guy who really kind of got me started in producing. I'd always sort of wanted to be a producer because that was, I sort of figured that out when I discovered actually what a producer was. Because
right.
like you said, I started out actually as a musician, and actually the one thing that people freak out about when they find out that I was actually in the sort of early version of Quiet Riot.
And we're going to mention that you did their album 99, Alive and Well, their reunion album.
Right. Because what had happened was I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, and
Huskers.
Yes, you betcha. It's hard to see, but I actually have my.
Well, you're talking to a Queens boy, but yeah. I know the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Right. Yeah. So, well, I always say that I'm a Husker fan, but I'm married into the Patriots dynasty. My wife is a.
Oh boy,
from Boston. Yeah, she actually we met. I produced her first record, right, and we met on that record, and then after, after that record, we just became great friends. And then eventually I got up the nerve and asked her out, and she took pity on me and was like, yeah, okay. So
Awesome.
when we got married, that was the trade. She'd become a Husker fan and I became a Patriot.
And you drank the Kool-Aid. She didn't.
Oh yeah. Most definitely.
All right. So here's one of the first questions I want to ask you. And I may be getting ahead of myself, but I got to ask this because you're a producer. It's a two-part question. The first part is, what attracts you to a project? And the second part of the question is, and you can name a name if you want. You don't have to name any names. Did you ever come across a project where you said to yourself, Jesus Christ, this fucking album or music sucks totally, but you've done it and you bit your lip and you did the best that you could. I'm not going to say you collected a paycheck, but I always wondered. I mean, do you ever come across that where you just say, "What am I doing here?" I mean, it's like putting a bow on a pile of dog shit.
There's been a few records like that, but I will say this, and I don't feel like I ever started a record with that feeling. Because you got to remember, one of the things that I truly love so much about my job is I love being a teacher. I love being an educator. And I love, sort of nurturing talent. That is like one of my favorite things to do. It's like, I choose a lot of times, I know this is weird, but I'll choose records primarily based off of, this is only sometimes, but I'll choose a record because I know how challenged they are.
That's a good way of looking at
it. That they're a band that needs me. There's certain bands that just need me, because they don't have any songs. They may not be the best musicians. It's like, and it's, one of the, the thing that I always say, I love being the architect. I love doing bands' first records, because it's like, that's like Shinedown, bands, Saliva, bands like that. It's like I got to be the architect of what they are, and that to me is just like, that's so thrilling, is the nurturing and building. And then a lot of times I'm totally okay. It's like, all right, off you go now. Go on and prosper.
I got you, Bob. And I was going to go in chronological order, but you mentioned Saliva, and I want to mention now for my fans, this is the producer of major hits. Now let's take, for instance, Saliva. Okay, Click Click Boom. You ever hear that song? I'm sure you heard that one. Well, how about this one? Ladies and gentlemen, please. The theme song from Intentional Talk. For you sports fans, this is the producer of that. Right. Okay, among many others, he's done a couple albums with them. Seether, the song "Broken," okay, with Amy Lee and the lead singer from Seether. And that song was all over the movies. That was in The Punisher, that song. And to mention "Click Click Boom" and all that, that was in Fast and the Furious, Talladega Nights. I mean, I don't have to go on, but you get the idea.
That's the funny one, was like, I didn't know that they put that in Talladega Nights, right?
Oh, you didn't know that?
And it was my
so you got the paycheck.
Well, what had happened was my wife and son and I were at the movies. We went to see Talladega Nights, right? And we're watching it, and gets to the big, the big race scene at the end. And
yeah,
I'm watching the movie and I'm just like oblivious, and my son's like, knocking me, and he goes, "Dad, listen."
Yeah.
What? Well, I didn't even like pay attention. He's like, "Listen to the song." And I'm like, "Click, click, boom." And I'm like, "Oh yeah."
No, he's telling you, listen to that noise. Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Now let me ask you, Bob, that whole chorus, click, click, boom.
Right.
Did they come to you with that? Was that the song, or?
the way that came about was so great. It was
I mean, that's a monster hit.
It's Josie calls me up. We'd finished the record, that first record, Every 6 Seconds. We had finished the record, and it was done, and I had mixed, and it was all finished. And then Josie calls me up just out of nowhere, and he goes, "Bob, I think we got us another hit here." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Check this out. Click, click, boom." And he starts like the thing. And I'm like, I literally 10 seconds after he got started, I'm like, that is
you could say fuck. It's my show. Don't worry about it.
That is a fucking hit.
Wow.
Right? And I literally, the second I hung up with him, I called the A&R guy, and I said, I hate to say this, but we got to go back into the studio and cut one more song. And he was like, "Sure, absolutely, go do it."
That's that's like I'm gonna get into like the hair metal. That's like Def Leppard would Pour Some Sugar on Me. Same thing happened there. That's like Poison with Unskinny Bop. I'm not making comparisons. I'm only telling you. And Warren too with Cherry Pie. All those songs were added at the end. They turned out to be their biggest hits.
Yeah. Well, that happens, and the reason why it happens a lot of times is when you do an album, when you do an entire body of work, after it's finished, you're able to look at it and go, "Oh, okay, this is the focus. This is what it is. This is what works about it." And that's more times than not, that's when that moment comes of like, "Oh, now that I see this, I got an idea," because you're able to look at the sum total. And that's happened on more than one, actually it happened on the second Saliva record also.
A Bloodstained Love.
Yeah, we had done the whole same thing. We had done the record. Well, actually, no, but we had tracked the entire record. We hadn't finished, but we had tracked pretty much the entire record. We did this record in New York at Bearsville Studios, and
Westchester.
The A&R people, they, classic this is old school, like rock and roll stories, right? They helicoptered in from Manhattan. They all went up to the roof and got on the helicopter at the Universal building and helicoptered out to, Woodstock, Bearsville. And they had the assistants at the studio out mowing a huge area for the helicopter to land out on this field, right? So the helicopter lands, they all pile out of the helicopter, they all come into the studio, and I play them, everything that we had at this point. So I'm playing the thing. They're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing." So afterwards, they all were like, "The record is absolutely spectacular, but
we need a hit.
We're not sure we have number one, the lead off single."
There you go.
And I was like, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. The band though was like, "Fuck the label.
Fuck that."
Yeah. Fuck you guys. This is a fucking hit. We fucking love it and all this kind of shit. So they were, needless to say, very displeased with the label. The label gets back on the helicopter, flies back. And I was just sort of sitting there thinking about, okay, what does this need? What does this record need? So this was one of those songs that was just absolutely the perfect storm. It was the perfect, literally the storm, because I walk outside, I have the acoustic guitar, I'm sitting there, and this huge thunderstorm is brewing, and the energy that you feel from the storm, the negative ions, everything, and vibing, right? And I'm like, "Oh, fuck yeah." So I start literally, and I'm not kidding when I say this, I wrote that song, Always, from top to bottom, which was number one sort of worldwide. That song was massive. I wrote that song from top to bottom in real time. It was just like this, not the lyrics. I'm just saying just the music and everything, that the melody and everything sort of came to me. And it was one of those things that was like, it was, I love those divine interventions, but for a lot of songwriters understand it's not actually divine intervention.
It's producer intervention.
It's 40 years of writing songs for people and knowing what you're doing and knowing how to write a great song and being aware of what it takes and all that stuff. So anyway, so I write the song, and then I called the A&R guy up, literally right when he landed, right? And I said, I think I got something here. Can I play this for you? And we're over the phone. I'm literally like
holding the phone
on my lap while I'm playing this, and humming this song to him. And it's like by the end of the song, I pick up the phone back and he goes, "It's a fucking hit. Get it done. Make it happen. Go track it."
Awesome.
So I go back to the band, right? And I say, "Guys, I think I got something. I think I got our lead off song." And I played him the song top to bottom, and they all, to a man, were like, "Fucking hate it.
Oh,
this sucks. We don't want to do it."
Oh boy.
Right? And so I called the label back, and the label was like, "Fuck those guys. You do this song. However you get it done, you fucking do it." Okay. So I'm like, okay. So on the actual record, that's actually me playing
everything
except for the drums. And that's my wife playing drums on that song.
On Always.
Yeah, the hit single Always. I'm playing everything. My wife's playing drums. And so after I got it tracked and sounding really good, right, I played it for Josie, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, that does sound kind of like a hit." So then he actually, because I had the hook, the "I love you, I hate you," but that's all I had, right? And actually, I didn't have Always, but I essentially had all the melody line and just a couple of words here and there. And then Josie, that guy is so brilliant. This shit just comes out of him. And like I swear to God, like a half hour later, he comes back with, pages of lyrics, and it's like, "Here, check this out." And then he just like, and I'm like, "Dude, let's go cut it right now. Get in there and sing." And then he sang it. And then Wayne actually came in and did the guitar solo. Wayne played the solo on it. And then bada bing, bada boom, a million plus.
Is your wife credited as drummer on that?
I don't think that was going to happen because Paul was a little sensitive about it. To this day, I think he's still a little pissed,
So like one of my favorite bands, Kiss, what they did.
Oh, there's always, listen.
It's going on for years. I know.
For the most part, it's like, I've been asked to write
play bass and stuff.
I've been asked to write a book for years now. And I've always said the problem is that most of the stories, they're not my stories to tell. Some are because, hey, it's all good. Like they know the band, Saliva, they know it. They're okay. They've lived with it now for 21 years. So they were like, hey, shit happens, but it's like, there's some bands that I wouldn't divulge anything simply because, some people are more sensitive than others,
Well, I've said it in my past interviews. I'm a huge Kiss fan, and Dick Wagner was like the hidden guitarist in Kiss for years,
Yeah.
And then, you can go to the Psycho Circus album with Kevin Valentine playing drums. That Peter only played on one song on that album. And let's take, for instance, going back into the 60s, Carol Kay, the bass player. She played on all the Beach Boys records and many others.
Well, because I heard so many stories about those days because my ex-wife's father, my children's grandfather is Bones Howe. He produced the Mamas, Papas, Fifth Dimension, the Turtles, the Association, Elvis, you know.
Right.
And he was one of the biggest producers of the 60s, right? And so, yeah, we used to, you know, I'd get the skinny on. So, you know, he told a great story about how when the Association was getting ready to do their record, they were in
Windy,
and also Cherish, just great hit song.
Yeah.
But, so Bones came into the room and the band was sitting around, and he brings in essentially the wrecking crew. It was Tommy and Carol and Hal Blaine on drums, and you know, he brought them in. It's like, boys, I want you to meet your band.
Yeah, there's your band.
And they were all like, what, man? I thought we were gonna play on your record.
I know. And
like,
we'll move on to your stuff. And I want to mention one other thing about this. It has relevance. On the Beach, and we don't talk about the Beach Boys much on my show, but I want to mention this, and we'll mention ghost musicians. Mostly every Beach Boys song, the guitar solo was none other than Glenn Campbell, the country singer.
I know, he was what a great guitar.
Right?
Actually,
the Rhinestone Cowboy himself.
Yeah, one of the interesting ghosty things I did was remember the Diet Coke commercial from the 80s, the Just for the Taste of It?
Just for the Coke?
Right.
Yeah.
The one with Elton John playing.
Yeah.
Right? I'm playing keyboards on that.
For Elton John?
Yeah. No. Elton played the piano, but I played all of the
Oh, okay. I was going to say, what the hell?
But that's an example, and this goes back to the Saliva thing. It's not that they couldn't do it. A lot of times it's just proximity.
Yeah.
You know, it's like had Elton not been able to actually be available to cut that piano, then I would have played it. But no big deal, because all I would have done was listen to it and just tried to mimic him.
I got you.
And that's even with Saliva. I mean, and anytime I'm on a record playing, my job is to become whoever it is that I'm playing.
Get the best possible record.
Yeah, it's just being true to the artist's, vision and what their thing is. That's my job,
I got you. I want to go through some of your, because I know we're limited for time. I can go through your whole career and we could have 2 shows. But I got a bunch of albums that I want to just throw at you, and you tell me what you can remember about it, or whatever, whatever you like. We mentioned Quiet Riot, Alive and Well. You did that one, but here's one of my favorite albums that you produced, and it wasn't a monster hit, but it was in the early stages of your production career. Union, The Blue Room.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was
John Corabi, Bruce Kulick, Jamie Hunting. I love that. I loved the first album. I really liked this album, but it got caught up in whatever it was, and they sort of disbanded after that. What can you tell me about doing that album? And you wrote songs on that album too,
right? And I hate to say it because it's zero reflection on them or the album, but you got to remember how many records I've made in my life, and
right?
There's a lot of things that are just sort of oh yeah, man, I made that record. It's like I remember it, but I don't remember much about it.
I got you.
Because there was, and again, it's no reflection on anything other than the fact that of just doing so much work. It's like, part of it was I sort of had a system down from sort of the early mid 90s all the way through sort of 2012 or 13, 14, somewhere around there, where I tracked drums at Henson Studios in Los Angeles, the old A&M Studios, which is like absolutely legendary place. I mean, that place is staggeringly good. But I would track the drums there. And then I come back to my place. Well, as you can kind of see, it's hard to see everything, but this room is everything you've ever dreamed of as an instrument or a computer or sound design or anything. Every amp, you know, I mean, I have literally everything known to man in this room. And this is where I make the bulk of the record, you know, is in. Now I make everything, because we actually on our property, we actually built a drum room and a whole, so we do drum tracking here, and I mix here and everything. So
awesome.
You know,
well, here's one I want to throw at you that I hated, and I'll tell you straight out. Black Sabbath reunion, the song Psycho Man. What the fuck were they thinking?
Trust me.
Okay, there you go.
But you know what? In the defense of all of that, the problem really ultimately that, and listen, you're not wrong. You're not wrong on that, you know.
That was like
but what it was it wasn't four guys making music. Like everything that you liked about Black Sabbath from the old days was four guys in a room,
right,
practicing, playing, going in,
living and breathing the album.
Yeah, being it. This was just them sort of like everybody sort of politically going, hey man, we need a song or two. Okay. And it's like,
what do you got? Yeah. I got this riff. Yeah. Well, I got this title, man. It's called Psycho Man, man. And I love Ozzy. I love Sabbath.
And don't get me wrong, I love those guys.
Yeah.
Tony Iommi is a good.
We'll get to Tony Iommi. You worked on 2 more albums with him.
Yeah. And I love Tony, and I loved working with Ozzy, and it was great, but it was, you know, it was tough right from the get-go, because it was really, there was so much political interference from just power.
Yeah. 4 different managers. I know they have 4 different managers.
Yeah, and every one of them had
right
an opinion, right? And
but I mean, can you tell them, listen, the song sucks. I mean, the song sucks. I mean, what are we doing here? And and eventually, who has the final say?
Well, I mean, you know, let's put it like this: if I had the final say,
you wouldn't have made it.
I'd been fired, and somebody else would be in the chair.
Right? I got you.
You know, and so that's the thing about final say. There is no absolute sort of final say. You know, except for, I suppose at the end of the day, it's really the record company with them, you know, being able to say, we're not going to release this.
Yeah. So we just get back to the question I asked in the beginning. Did you ever come across something that was just, I'm not saying that you're saying it was bad. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but you know, you do the best you can and you move on. You put your big boy pants on, you do the best you can.
But that's, you know, that honestly, that's kind of the deal. You know, it's like, hey man, sometimes you just got to suck it up and do the very best you can. And, you know,
right.
It even started with the actual live recordings. The guy who actually put the mics up live, right?
Yes.
He didn't even record the audience. Like when I got, right, every bit of audience that you hear, right? Every bit of audience that you hear on that record was me manufacturing, taking samples from, you know, like I had samples from football stadiums, soccer stadiums, like smaller venues, and I just literally wrote and blended the whole thing.
Yeah, I hear you, Bob, and that's what a lot of people don't know. And when they say bands release a live album, is it really live? Like Kiss, for instance, they even admitted in interviews, they put those voices from other shows into the songs. You know what I mean?
Listen, what I will say about that is that at the end of the day, you got to remember, ultimately, my responsibility to the audience is to entertain them. Okay. And the purity of something, to me, has always been somewhat second fiddle to, is this entertaining to an audience. You know, I'll give you an example. It's like, you know, I played keyboards on Tracy Chapman's first 2 records, right? And then, you know, I produced Sheryl Crow, worked with Sheryl Crow, you know, all through, then Sabbath, everybody else. And I'm always asked, what's, you know, how can you go from Tracy Chapman to so-and-so, right? The truth is, it's all music. It's just simply what the artist wants to connect and say to the audience. So ultimately, my responsibility is that very thing, is being able to say, okay, let's like, what does Tracy Chapman's audience want to hear?
Right. They want to hear her.
Yeah. They don't want to hear fucking Black Sabbath.
No, they want to hear her with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah. They want, that's exactly it. Right. And so my whole mission on her first 2 records was to stay the fuck out of the way. You know,
so educate me. Because here's one, because I'll be honest with you, I skipped over Tracy Chapman because I try to get the bands that I knew my fans would like and what I like. You were involved with Fast Car?
Yeah, I worked on the first 2 records. Yeah.
That was her first record. So obviously you were with Fast Car, her monster hit, a major hit. There you go. See, I did not know that. And I just learned something, Bob. Thank you very much.
You know, I mean, that's the
your career is so vast and long. I mean,
yeah. And that's what makes me so happy as a human being is, you know, success is such an abstract thing, you know, because it's like, if, you know, I always say when somebody says, oh, you're a record producer. And I'm like, yeah, but that only means something if you like the records I do.
Right. If nobody listens to it, what the fuck does it mean?
Yeah, it's like saying, you know, oh, you're an actor.
Right. What have you been in?
Yeah, exactly. I've never seen you. You know, so
right.
What difference does it make?
Well, I'm trying to condense this to make it as quick. Yeah. Here's what
I've just been doing this so long. There's too many stories.
Exactly. But I'm going to throw some bands out. And here's where I'm going to throw you my confusing stuff now.
Okay.
Alice Cooper, Dragon Town, and Brutal Planet. You did those 2 albums with him, and I'm an Alice Cooper fan.
Yeah.
You know, the first one you did with him was Dragon Town. Was Brutal Planet. Okay. Trigger Man, Sex, Death, and Money. I know he was trying to go. I mean, I got so confused when that album came out. Did he come to you and say, this is the sound I want to get? I want to go for like a real heavy, dark sound? Or do you say that's the direction we're going to go to? No,
actually, the way it came about was a good friend of mine, Bob Ezrin, was
yes, and you wrote a song with him.
Yeah, and Bob was like, hey, you should be doing Alice Cooper, because Alice Cooper needs to reinvent himself. You know, he needs to evolve, because otherwise he's just reproducing
the same stuff.
Shit, you know, and eventually audiences are like, you know, oh, I've heard that before 100 times, you know? And so, you know, we had a meeting, Alice, Bob and I, and we just sat down and we're like, you know, all right, well, if that's what you want to do, I can make that happen in a heartbeat.
Right.
You know? And it all just sort of came from that. And I got to be honest, I fucking love making that record. And that was so great. Alice is just the coolest.
One of the nicest guys in rock.
He's just such a great guy. And I, you know, I really enjoyed musically making that record too. I mean,
right.
You know,
it's funny you mentioned Ezrin, because people who don't know, as me and Bob, a lot of music nerds know, Bob Ezrin is a mega producer, produced Kiss, Destroyer, you know, Kiss albums, and famed producer with Alice Cooper. But the funny thing I want to mention is you said Bob Ezrin told you, you know, he wants to reinvent himself. He needs another producer. But who's Alice Cooper's latest album produced by that he just came out with? Bob Ezrin.
Yeah.
And there's one of his best albums he came out with, Detroit Stories.
But understand something, that
at the time
it was very smart though, because, you know, had Bob just continued making the same record,
yeah,
it wouldn't have worked. But when you take a big leap and a diversion, and then you come back to it, you know, all of a sudden it's like, oh, dude, that's fresh, because you've been to other places.
So here's a question, the last question about Alice Cooper, and then we'll move on. I want to ask you. You did 2 albums with him. You did Brutal Planet, which wasn't really a hit. I'm not going to say a hit because he didn't have a lot of hits after Poison.
No hits.
Exactly. But then he went back and did Dragontown. Did he want to work with you again because he was so satisfied with that?
Yeah.
So he did, and that's what he was going for.
To be honest with you, I didn't love Dragontown, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But
I understand. We're just blowing shit out. We know that. Nobody takes it personally what we say.
Yeah, I mean, because Dragontown was honestly, I mean, I just felt like we had sort of created the mold with Brutal Planet, and we just kind of stamped the, Dragontown with that. But again, though, the beautiful thing about this is that I can have an opinion about something, and then somebody comes in and like, oh my God, that's the best fucking record you ever made in your life.
Right. And that's the only person that said it.
Yeah. And I'm like, all right.
Whatever. One of the highlights on that album, the song I love is Disgraceland.
Oh yeah.
Which he wrote about Elvis dying on the toilet.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. I remember when we did that. So
yeah.
Like, I mean,
but
it is what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but here's where you get into like the guitar gods. You worked with Tony Iommi on his solo album, Iommi, and you worked with a lot of people on that. Yeah. I mean, I could throw names out: Glenn Hughes, Dave Grohl, Serge Tankian, Billy Idol, Henry Rollins. I mean, he had guest stars. The album didn't do well in America, but it
wasn't. You got to remember something.
It was a fan favorite.
Most of these, some of these sort of eclectic records like that, they're never going to do good. It's not like Tony Iommi on his own is going to have a fucking hit record, and I mean that with love and respect, but it's not, we made that record artistically to say, hey, you know what? This is something fun and new. And
very diverse.
Yeah. And it was just, basically, from the moment Tony and I met, we just clicked. We just clicked so well. And part of it was because I sort of took handcuffs off him. He had Black Sabbath handcuffs on, and that's not unlike, what I did with Rob Halford. That was the same thing. It was like, dude, he was in Judas Priest prison, and Fight prison. And he was like, I need to do something, and that with a lot of artists, that's part of what I love to do is say, hey man, we can do anything. We can try anything and go absolutely nuts and have fun and create the coolest thing. So
now an album like that with all those guest stars, Bob, honestly, do you have those? Are you meeting those people face to face, or are you just laying down tracks and they're sending you stuff and you're putting it on there?
Some we did together, like the Grohl song
Goodbye Lemon.
Yeah, the three of us wrote that together.
Awesome. That's one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah, I love that song. And actually, one of my fave stories actually came from the tracking that song, because there was a point where I don't know whether I think it's got to be in the credits somewhere, but that's Brian May.
Yeah, he did the guitar solo.
Yeah. And it was one of those moments, those, sort of perfect moments where we were in the studio and I had Brian May on this side. I had Tony Iommi on this side. And here I was sort of buried in the console, and like Brian May sort of leaning down going, what would you like me to play here? And I was like, oh my God.
You're Brian May, what the fuck?
Dude, it was one of those moments where you just like, holy shit.
Did you say to yourself, holy shit, I made it?
Oh, it isn't so much of a made it. It was more of like, don't they realize I'm just a fucking schlub from Lincoln, Nebraska? It's
I
like,
use that word all the time. I'm just a schlub from Queens.
yeah,
I say
it's
that.
like,
I'm not in your stratosphere.
but you know what I'm saying? It was
Yeah,
just,
I hear you.
because you got to remember, I mean, you know, success is such an abstract thing. It's like, you know, I'm just a guy who, you know, it's like I'm out watering the lawn, you know, I'm out, you know, I watch TV and
Toilet paper sticks to your shoes too.
that's exactly the same thing. And, you know, it's only, you know, the only time I really ever think about what I actually do and have done in my life is in interviews just like this, where I'm sitting here and, you know, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I guess I did do a lot of cool shit, you know?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
moving on, you did his other album, Iommi Fused. I was okay with that album. I thought one of the highlights was the song Dopamine. I thought that was a good track.
That's
you know,
one of those that I have to.
Okay. You know what, Bob? Maybe I should work with you. We're on the same page as far as the echelon of your work.
But you know, honestly, it's not a big stretch or surprise. I mean,
all right, gee, you try to make me feel good, Bob. Jeez,
you know,
right.
I'm sorry, but it's one of those things. It's like, you know, I've always said it's like people let you know.
Right, we're not stupid.
Yeah, I mean, they let you know whether it's a fucking hit or not.
Yeah,
you know? It's like there's, you know, it's like you'd be surprised, you know, the sort of feedback, and I'm like, hey,
I got it is what it is. So now we're gonna get to your diversity because in 2009 you worked with Lynyard Skynard.
Oh yeah, yeah.
God and Guns. You worked on that album.
I loved working with those guys.
And that album was one of my favorites by them.
That is a good record.
Yeah. And you did the next one too, Last of a Dying Breed, which was sadly the last with Billy Powell, the longtime piano keyboardist.
Yeah.
I mean, so just a quick thing about that. Like, you're a keyboardist, Billy Powell. Were you like in awe watching him?
I actually played the majority of keyboards on that record.
Oh boy, you telling me Billy didn't play on it?
Yeah, no. He did a thing or two, but you know, by that time it was, you know, it was, you know, wasn't that he couldn't do it. You know, it was just that it was like, again, proximity and time.
Right. I got you.
But they wanted him on the record because
he's a member of the band.
Yeah, it's iconic, and you
know, he died shortly after that.
That record was tough because they lost their bass player at the time. He died, as well as Billy. So that, you know, that was a tough one. And they were sort of, you know, because they had just, you know, also we had the new Peter Keys actually playing some keyboards on it too. So again, it's one of those things that, you know, a lot of times the way it kind of works is, you know, it's late at night, you're in the studio, and I'm going, oh shit, I need to put that on. I forgot about that. And I'm just like, here, let me run out and put this on.
Now, a band like Lynyard Skynard, this is the last question, and we'll move on with Lynyard Skynard. So diverse. That's a Southern rock band. The previous album you did was, let's just say, Iommi Fused. Whose idea was it to get Bob Marlette to produce Lynyard Skynard? Did they approach you? Does a record company approach you, or you approach them?
It was actually the band.
Really?
Yeah, the band had, you know, reached out to me, but it was actually, there was a broker here. Okay, this is what was interesting on this. It's like one of my really, really good friends is John Lowry, John 5.
Oh yeah, John 5.
Yeah, and John and I have been friends. You know, actually. I'll just do a quick diversion here, but audiences will kind of relate to this. How I really got into heavier rock was in, I think it was 93, 94, around that time period. My buddy Rudy Sarso, who I actually moved to LA with,
great guy. I got Rudy on my wall there.
Yeah, he's the best. He's the greatest.
Back in Quiet Riot.
Yeah, exactly. So it was Rudy and Frankie and myself actually in my dad's station wagon drove to LA together and
really?
Oh yeah, and then we put another band together in LA when we
So wait, hold on a second. Now you're saying it's you, Rudy, and Frankie.
Yeah.
So what were you playing? If Rudy was the bass player,
keyboards.
So Quiet Riot had a keyboard player.
No. This is the sort of pre.
Okay.
This is the
pre Randy.
Yeah, there was it was pre Randy. Although I actually did play on the first Quiet Riot with Randy stuff. I actually played keyboards on one of the ballady tracks or something.
Wow.
But
good stuff.
But anyway, so that's Rudy had then, after Quiet Riot, after all that shit, in the early 90s, was putting a new band together called Sun Kings. And he had this just crazy ass guitar player, and he was completely tattooed, never wore a shirt, played a pink Jackson guitar, and had a Marshall stack of pink Jackson guitar. And I remembered going, because Rudy was like, will you help us, sort of develop the band and all that stuff? And I'm like, sure. So I came out there, and the band, and sadly just sort of didn't quite have the right sort of didn't have the singer right. But I was like, okay, you, the guitar player with the pink guitar on crazy,
you come with me.
You come with me. And I pulled him out of that. And then John Five, and a singer named Mark Binder, created a thing called Red Square Black. Red Square Black was this little EP I did, and that changed the course of my career, because it was this little super hardcore industrial crazy heavy thing. And it was one of those things where all these artists knew that record, and so it became this like undergroundy kind of thing.
You're the guy that did Red Square Black. Oh my God.
Exactly it. And that's exactly it. So John and I, we've been working together. I mixed, some of his solo records, and we've been close for ever since then. We've been best buds. But
so here's a couple more bands I'm going to throw at you, and then we'll wind it up. 2011, you did the Anvil Juggernaut of Justice, which reason why I'm mentioning is they were in relative obscurity up until they came out with the documentary. After the documentary, they got their record deal, and they came out with their new album. They even mentioned it, they were calling it Juggernaut of Justice, and you were the producer on that.
That was literally their manager and my manager were in cahoots to get me to do this record, because I had never heard of them. I had no clue.
Yeah. Most people didn't up until the documentary.
Yeah. And I never even watched the documentary. So my manager was like, I'm going to send you this movie. This is sort of downloading, right?
Right.
So they sent me the CD of the movie. So I get the movie, and I'm like, I'm not fucking watching this, right? It's like, so I'm like, honey, here, you watch it. My wife watch it, right? So I'm in the studio working. She comes out. She's got tears in her eyes. She's like, you have to do this fucking record for these guys. And I'm like, I don't know, man. This doesn't really sound like it's a me thing, right? And then she said, come and watch this movie right now. So she drags me in. I'm watching the movie. By the end, I got tears in my eyes.
God.
Like, oh my God, I just love these guys. They're just so like heartwarming and just sort of amazing.
One of the funniest things I saw, and it's not even funny, me being a musician and I played in front of people I know, was they're playing in like fucking Norway or something to 4 people, and one of the guys is sitting on this fucking little sofa going like this. There's 4 people there, and the guy's in a busted sofa with a beer in his hand. He's like going like this, watching Anvil, and I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's so harsh because it's so real.
Right. Yeah. You know, you're a musician. You know, you show up to the gig. You hope people come. Sometimes there's a lot of people. Sometimes there isn't. But I never had a guy in a fucking couch going like this.
But you know what's funny, and this is sort of this to me is the takeaway in a lot of ways of what music is all about. It's amazing how you show up. There's 4 people there, and you play
your ass off,
fucking heart out. You know, because that's what we do. We make music. You know, we live for this shit. This is what
it's my passion. It's what I do. I mean, this is why I do what I do. I always say I'm a spoke in a wheel.
Yeah. And that's what, you know, I've always said about every single record I've ever made is I put everything I have into it because I love what I do. The results sometimes are out of my control.
Right.
You know, and listen, sometimes they're in my control and the records.
And it's like, well, here's where I know you got to be on your toes. My next guy, Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
You did. Now, here's the long name. I know it.
I don't even know the fucking name of this.
Venomous Rat Regeneration Vendor.
Thank you.
That's the album. And the single that you co-wrote that he came out with was the Dead City Radio and New Gods of Supertown.
Yeah.
He always comes up with these long names. Here's my question. A guy like Rob Zombie with the industrial end of it, if you want to call it, and all the loops and everything, how hard is it to produce a Rob Zombie album?
Very easy.
Very easy. Okay, great.
Very easy.
Great.
And I tell you why.
Because he's doing half of it.
He is a fucking machine.
There you go.
That guy is one of the hardest working men in show.
And I agree. That's what I was alluding to. Yeah.
It's amazing because I mean, although he doesn't do. I mean, he doesn't program and he doesn't play and he doesn't do any of that
right.
stuff.
He just tells you what he wants.
He just is a machine about knowing, you know, it's like, yeah, I like that. Nah, doesn't kill me, you know? And for me, it's like, you gotta remember how much that record was actually in my wheelhouse. You know, that's the shit that, you know, I can, in a heartbeat, I can build, you know, I can build and layer things. And, you know, it was so fun because it's the best story about this. John will probably be pissed that I'm saying this, but so John and I in LA wrote about 15 or 16 song ideas for the record because Rob was like, you know what? I want to make this record in my house in Connecticut. But he didn't have a studio. He had a barn that was his, you know, that was his office and movie theater. And it was a beautiful big barn with like just really nicely decked out. So we literally built a studio in his barn to track this record, right? And so John and I were like, okay, let's get a head start. We'll get some ideas in LA. So we put together a bunch of songs. We fly to Connecticut. We're in Connecticut. And first day, we like, you know, start firing up ideas and getting the gear, sort of everything. So everything, once we started getting, you know, to be able to play stuff, and we start playing through songs, right? First song, it's like, nah. Second song, nah. There's 15 songs, nah. And then all of a sudden he goes, check this out. And he plays me this really cool, crazy, eclectic Tom Waits song. And I'm like, that is so fresh and cool. He said, that's what I want my record to sound like.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, and but the best thing about it was looking over and seeing John's face, like,
he's like, what
the fuck? It's like, yeah, it was just so amazing. And then, but it was so beautiful because then it just opened the floodgates. And I love that record. I mean,
yes, and I got to tell you, that's one of my favorite Zombie records.
Yeah, I mean,
that and Hellbilly Deluxe, but that's one of my favorites. Rock and Roll in a Black Hole. I love that song.
No, I know. There's so many cool things. One of my favorites, and I forget the the name of it because that honestly, so
It's a
much
blur.
escapes my brain. But the one that kind of has a slow pace and then it gets fucking brutal heavy. I forget the name, but it's like I love that song. That's so good. There's so many.
Yeah.
And then the organ on Dead City, right?
Yeah. That was the first single.
Yeah. And I just loved that. That was just so much fun playing that because it,
And
the whole record, he called me, I think he was like, Twinkie Fairy Fingers or something like that. Because every time I would play, I sit down and play some like jazz kind of shit. He's like, oh, great, fairy fingers, It's
Fairy
like,
Finger.
yeah.
And you could tell how smart and into everything he does. I mean, the guy's a director now, and I love House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects. What great movies, And I'm not a real big horror fan, but I love his movies. And he's making the new Monsters.
Yeah.
You gonna be working with him again?
I don't know. It's like I think it was tough because I think ultimately he likes working with people that just simply do his bidding. It's like he just likes people that just sort of, okay, yeah.
Okay, I'll do it. And no resistance.
Yeah, and I'm, I think I was maybe a little bit too much, we could do, and it's like, and I would, go off on tangents and, build some crazy shit. So,
well,
but I did, John and I scored his film, the 31. We scored that film together.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about that one. I still love his work.
I never saw it. So
yeah, I love his work, but I wasn't crazy about that one. But last but not least on my list is another one of my favorites that you did. I'd like to hear what your thoughts on this. Sebastian Bach. You did Kicking and Screaming and Give Him Hell. Right. I believe Give Him Hell was the better of the two, but a shrug. And John 5 had a solo on that.
Yeah, I love Sebastian. Sebastian is just the greatest dude. He's such a character.
Right.
And most of the stories on those records are about, Sebastian, like he would always get so emotional about listening back, like, oh my God, it sounds so fucking amazing. And he's like beating on him.
Fucking awesome, man.
That's exactly.
Holy shit, did you hear that, man? Wow. Yeah.
You fucking nailed it, man. That's
thank you. You see, a lot of people say it on my show. I can do it.
It's fucking.
I got a picture of me and him. I met him, and he signed my Give Him Hell CD. Actually, I gave him a kiss. Pez. I got it on film and everything. Man, he's like,
holy shit, man! This is fucking awesome. Hey, check it out, man. Wow. What's your name, bro?
I have PTSD from working with him. I hear that voice and I'm like, ah.
I know, but listen, it's like me. You can't deny his enthusiasm. The guy's a rock and roller through and through. Huge Kiss fan.
One of my favorite things was on that record. He would always, like, when my wife would come in to tell me it was time to go to dinner or whatever, he'd say, listen, Lisa, listen, come here and listen to this. And then he'd like lip sync. And he's like looking at her like singing this thing, and you know how that awkward thing is, like my wife is just looking at him.
She's like okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like, what do you want me to do?
So whose idea on that? Like, I got to tell you, that album, I really love it. Some people didn't like it; they thought it was too new sounding, but I loved it. I thought All My Friends Are Dead. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Fucking Temptation. Great song. I can go on and on, but Knife to a Gunfight, Gun to a Knife Fight.
Yeah. Steve
Stevens wrote that with him.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, whose idea was it to put the April Wine cover, Rock and Roll is a Vicious Game?
I don't know.
You don't know that? That was like, took it like a totally different direction.
He could have come up.
Yo, listen to this song, man. It's by April Wine.
The truth is that as far as sonics go in making decisions about saying, okay, well, the record, it sounds more a lot of times, man, you just start tracking.
Right.
You just start making the record, and the record sounds like the people that are around you. And, you know, it's like, what did I feel like that day? Okay, I want the snare sound to be like this, or, you know, the kick sound to be like this, or the bass. It's stream of consciousness, you know, it's like, and I find that you can set out to make a record with a certain sonic concept or template, but more times than not, the reality sets in that moment, you're like, ooh, I love how that sounds. Let's record that.
Right.
And off you go. Do
you have bands come to you and say, listen, I want my snare, I want a Cannon snare. I want it to sound like Bon Jovi 19 from the New Jersey album. They bring the CD and they want you to listen to it. They say, can you get that sound? Yeah. They do that a lot, right?
They're actually, the band that was very much like that was Airborne. Airborne was really like that. But it was funny because it you know, when Ryan would describe his snare, he'd go, I want it to sound, you know, because he's
from Australia.
Australian, and he would say, fuck. Sound like fuck, you know, like, you know, do fuck, right? It was like, I'm like, okay. And the other thing was, he was like, I don't want any ring. I don't want any sizzle ring or any of that. I just want
fa.
Right, yeah. And I'm like, all right, we can do
okay,
that.
No problem. We'll get you the fa.
Yeah.
Just get the fa out of here.
And then we had the whole battle over, you know, Pro Tools versus analog, right? And because they were like, hey man, you know, we gotta do this analog, old school. And I'm like, dude, I fucking hate tape. I don't want to record on tape. Tape sucks, you know? And they're like, yeah, man, but it's not authentic. It's like, okay, here, we'll do a shootout. And if you can pick which one,
tape,
then we got you.
Right.
And they all chose Pro Tools.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Are you a Pro Tools man, or are you a?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All
not
right.
Even a question. Dude, if some of the records, if I had to make those records old school,
forget it.
Remember how many records I actually did.
Yes.
Old school.
Even let's go with the Rob Zombie record.
Yeah. It's like, fuck tape.
I know. So Bob, listen, what do we have coming up? What do you got on the horizon? Is there any bands you could tell us that you're working with? I know you have your own place now. You want to give a plug to it?
Well, this is actually the Blue Room is the studio, but
the name of the studio.
Yeah, the name of the studio is the Blue Room. But I also Black Love is my company that and you know, actually there's a couple of things that I just am having a blast with now. There's a new band from Atlanta that I just finished. Like Machines is the name of the band. Come and Get It is the first single that just is starting to hit radio.
Light Machines?
Like Machines.
Oh, Like Machines. Like
Machines.
Gotcha.
And their first single's really starting to make some headway. And another band that we got the first single is out now. And did you ever get into a band called Red Sun Rising?
Yes.
Red Sun Rising. Well,
I've heard of them. I heard one of the songs I heard from them.
They imploded, you know, because of their own dysfunction. Right. They imploded. But the guy that was sort of the brains behind the whole thing was the guitar player, Ryan. And he has put a new band together, found a new singer, and the new singer is better than the other guy.
Wow.
And I'm like, holy shit, this is good. And we did two singles. The first two singles we did it COVID style. We sort of long distance and stuff. But they're actually heading out here to Blue Room here in September. We're going to actually track the whole record.
Wait, I'm trying to. Ryan Williams.
Yes, Ryan Williams.
He was the guitarist. So he was the guitarist in Red Sun Rising. So you're saying that he started his own band. And what's the name of the band?
It's called Monarch.
Monarch. Okay,
Yeah.
I got
And
you.
it's really, really good. I'm very excited about that one. That, it's the, I hate to put it in a box, but it's the perfect blend. It's almost like a Red State Rock alternative band. It's like, it's got that, classic Red State Rock sort of rock thing, but it's really kind of cool and special because that singer is one in a million. This kid is
Awesome.
the real deal.
So listen, I want to thank Bob for coming on. I love this interview, Bob. I really did. You opened my eyes to a lot. I learned a lot. And I'm glad I got to give you the compliments on the albums and a little bit of criticism, and you took it like a champ. But I got to ask you my last question.
Okay.
And give me somebody. Who do you want to work with that you've never worked with before? And you would just say, I'd love to produce his album. It could be anybody from any era.
Possibly, and it's sort of a stylistic thing, but I love to work with Peter Gabriel.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Great choice.
Peter
Do you
Gabriel,
know? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
And then the other one is there's a band from Scotland that is probably one of my all-time favorites, and it's a band called the Blue Nile. And it's so, when people hear this, they'll go, no, there's no way.
Right. But that's the adversity, and you want to do it.
That record, I can put that record hats. I can put it on anytime, day or night, car, home, wherever. And all of a sudden, my blood pressure goes down, and all of a sudden I'm transported to some place, and
Awesome. Do you know I've done must be 50 interviews over the last 8 or 9 months. I've asked that question I don't ask that question all the time. I've asked it 5 times. 4 out of the 5, you know who they told me?
who?
Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
It's always Paul McCartney.
I got to meet Paul McCartney. I got
Awesome.
to hang out with Paul McCartney.
All right. Did you smoke weed with him?
Actually, the truth be told, I'm one of those odd ducks. I've never been drunk in my life.
Oh, come on.
Seriously.
You're going to pull a Gene Simmons on me?
And I smoked pot twice.
Wow.
The first time I didn't feel a thing. Second time I was like, oh my God, I can't feel my face. I'm not breathing. Somebody take me to the hospital, right?
And you're talking about a guy that's produced since the late 90s. I mean, you weren't in the 80s. You were around in the 80s, but that was when they had a pile of coke on the friggin' mixing board.
Oh yeah, I started actually producing in the 80s. In the mid 80s is some of my first. But I made my first record in 1972.
Really?
Yeah, 1972.
I was 2.
Yeah, I know it's a whole cruel world out there. And I had my first platinum record at 1979, I think.
Who was that?
Yeah. Al Stewart.
Oh, Year of the Cat.
Yeah, I played piano.
You were involved with Year of the Cat?
No, I joined after that.
In the Year of the Cat.
Right. But I played it every night on stage.
How many people know Al Stewart, the Year of the Cat? That goes to show you, Jesus Christ.
But listen, you didn't even get to the one of my most famous songs ever.
Tell me.
I wrote a song that saved the universe.
Wait. Tell me the song and I'll see if I know who it is.
It's a song called In Time. Did you ever see Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
Yes, of course.
I wrote the song that saved the fucking universe.
Oh, I got you. A wild stallion.
the song, the In Time. I wrote.
And you wrote that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty. So it's funny because that was, of all the songs, that song still gets. And you know what's funny is my buddy Sheryl Crow actually singing backgrounds on that song.
Really?
Yeah.
You know what? Before we go, I got to ask you, what did you work with Sheryl Crow? I got to mention Sheryl Crow. I love her.
Cheryl and I, I produced and we cut a song called Hundreds of Tears for that movie Point Break. Remember the Keanu Reeves Point Break?
Yeah,
That was
the ex-presidents are surfers.
Yeah, that was the big love scene on the beach.
Yeah.
That whole thing. But Cheryl and I had been very good friends, and I tried to get her a record deal.
That's like 91. 91 when that song.
Yeah, it would have been that 89, 99.
Yeah, before she can't hit it big in 95.
Because that was, I got introduced, Neil Sean from Journey introduced me to
Sure.
because I had produced his solo album, Late Night, as well as I did The Storm. I did 2 of their records, the Journey, reconfiguration, right?
Yes.
But Neil had introduced me to her, and then see what I mean? It's like, dude,
We could go on forever.
yeah,
It's like a tree branch. I ask you one question. There's 5 other things we could ask.
well, that's the thing. Is just it goes on forever.
Well, listen, I enjoyed it. I'm sure my fans are going to enjoy it. And you can always come back. You're part of the Rock Shop family now. So maybe we'll do a part 2 when you have time.
Whenever I'm good. At this point in my life, I'm just so blessed. I'm so happy, and I love sort of putting back into the.
Oh yeah, I love this, Bob. I mean, it was great interview. I'm gonna post it. I'll send it to you. And we had a lot of fun. I'm sure my fans are gonna love it. And you can put it up on your page if you like. I want to tell you something. Just hold on one second.